What's up, everybody? I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and welcome to another episode lesson of The Right Mindset. Today, we're going to go over step 7 on writing a novel. Take a break and come back. Some of the things we're going to touch on is we'll go over why we need to take a break after we finish the first draft. Is it an arbitrary amount of time or whatever? How do I make that step away from time worth it? And things that will benefit the novel and yourself by taking that little break. Let's get to it. Hit the intro. Boom, bam, boom. All right, as always, today's lesson, we got step 7 on writing a novel, which is take a break and come back later. If you're new here, by the way, if you're a beginner or an advanced writer, author, screenwriter, please click and subscribe to the channel by hitting the bell icon so you don't miss out. Some of the things that the Right Mindset channel goes over is lessons on the craft, analyzing and reviewing stories, and of course, interviews. Let's get right to it. A biased mind plays tricks. Taking a break from your manuscript allows you to come back to it with fresh and renewed creative energy. Fresh eyes. That's what that was supposed to be. Fresh eyes. And renewed creative energy. If you start editing your manuscripts 10 minutes after you finished it, it'll be much harder to take an unbiased approach to the work. See, you'll see the manuscript for what you've been working on, engulfed in, and emotionally a part of. Plus, we can end up having that I'm so close to finishing it energy that would destroy a relaxed overview. Basically, what I'm saying is, you already know the whole script. The novel. I mean, you know the whole thing. You know it all. So, in this situation, if you continue to work on it, you're already exhausted from writing the book mentally, and you already know every little element of it. So what are you really looking at? It's a little harder to kind of see what's missing because your brain is connecting the dots that might not be there because you already know. Sort of like, well, I know why the character's saying this because I know the character, but other people would be like, why are they saying that? Okay. A break is not only a step away from working your brain to the nub, but a chance to breathe for yourself and the story. We are writers, and our brain is the most powerful tool in our arsenal. If we don't care for the brain won't care for you. How can we use a finely harnessed tool if it has been worked until it is dull? We can't, and that is why we have to step away. Now, the breathing of your manuscript will get is a chance to be left alone and settled. This time away will give you and the manuscript a chance to A, be forgotten a little bit for, let me repeat that. Taking some time away from the script, this time away will give the manuscript a chance to A, be forgotten a little for a freshly needed perspective when you do return, B, the ideas to settle into the place for the reread when the time is right, as a familiar story doesn't stand out since your brain fills in the pieces, as I said. And C, there is more to discover in a story when you read it with a fresh mind, clear perspective, and a sense of discovery on the reread. Reread! Basically what I'm saying is the biased mind knows all. So you want to get to the point where you don't remember every little thing. And even if you have a good idea of what the story is because it's your story, it's your baby. By taking that break, you're actually pausing your brain from the story for a little bit. And when you come back, it's almost like you get a nice little break. All right. Things that will benefit The biggest problem about knowing a story is that you know the story. When we have others read through the alpha or beta reader stages, they are seeing the story for the first time. Well, hopefully. Your goal is to trick your brain into being a first time reader. You'll never be at a point where you don't know the story at all. That's impossible. It's a part of you. But you can be away long enough where your brain is ready to look at it in a new light. What are things that will benefit from this new light? Well, let's go with it. You'll be able to take note of the narrative's clarity or not. This is your chance to do a read through where you take notes on the narrative's plot beats. As you notice things, mark them down into a collection of plot beats. For example, if you read your manuscript and you have a main plot and some subplots, you want to keep those beats together. Jared found himself meeting the love of his life for the first time, though neither knew what awaited them. I would mark this down under the main plot. Now, every time I deal with a plot beat that influences the main plot, I would write a sentence about it or just copy the beat. Okay? When I first when I finish reading my manuscript, I can read over the notes in order and see if I am A, missing something, or B, it needs more work. This should be the same for all the subplots too. Keep everything separate to help you take witness to clarity of the narrative you created. Basically, what I'm saying there is this benefit is that while you're doing the reread, write down what you feel is the plot, the main plot, and the subplots. All right. You could even simplify it, or like I said, you could copy out the beats. So if it's like, Thomas met with Ray Ray, and you're like, oh, and they had a really great time. All right. That's friendship or whatever. I don't understand what's going on. I just took a nap. All right. Number 2, same goes for character development. What is character development really? Well, we want to see a dimensional character on the page. We see this through their choices, arcs, as they have a beginning, middle, and an end, and their involvement in the plots of the narrative. This is another place you can jot notes down as you read through the manuscript. If Jared makes a choice, I would write down what that choice was, why, and about what. As I get to the end of the manuscript, I can look back to see if there was any inconsistency with A, his choices, B, any growth or not to their choices and character, C, are they adding any real value to the plots they are involved in, and D, what is the overall arc of that character? All right, 3, sufficient depth to world building. What stands out with world building is not the overindulgent exposition of a world that has no influence on the narrative. It's how it influences the narrative or plays off of it as a reaction to the world around the plot and story, which is the narrative. Take note of what happens in the world around what's happening and how it is happening. You want to see characters reacting, exploring, and discovering the world they know and don't know. For example, a religious character might bring depth to the religion they study simply through their actions, dialogue, etc. Do they need to go deep into that religion? No. They need only utilize their involvement and knowledge of the religion to divulge their perspectives, choices, etc. Ella, the cleric, awoke an hour earlier than the others. She knelt upon the west, blessing the day ahead through her wistful words of love to her goddess Athena. Okay, we are learning about her religious culture through action. This is also known as showing, not telling. Maybe even what she wears is showing the process of clerics and how they worship their god. So in this situation, she got up earlier, an hour earlier than the others, because that is one of the times that she has to pray. How does she pray? She kneels towards the west and blesses her day and wistful words of love to her goddess Athea. So we know who her goddess is. We know what she's doing. We know her process of prayer. Okay. So think of world building while reading through your manuscript to destroy white rooms empty environments, and streetless cities. You want the world around them to take life by the geography they are experiencing. If characters enter a city, you don't have to go into the history of that city, but you can go into the people in that city. Who walks the streets? What does the city look like? How are the people interacting or not? And the wealth or lack thereof is determined by the way a city works and looks. As you walk through your story and get into scenes, you want to mark down what, where, why, how, and when that scene takes place. Where are they? What is it about? What is it about where they are that makes it interesting? And how do they interact with where they are? Why are they there? And why is this place what it is? You don't have to go crazy with it, but if none of these questions or more are answered, you know it needs work. There should be some external element to their adventure, be it through the other characters, the characters themselves, locations, historical relevance, culture, etc. Look for those things within a scene. So, world building. Let me sum that up. While you take a break and you come back while you're reading, write down anything that represents world building. If you're learning something about the world or the behavior of the characters or culture, just jot that down. I would also mark down what chapter you're working on or what theoretical page you're working on within that chapter. And the reason is so you can cross-reference your notes, because if you see, I don't know why I keep yawning. If you can cross-reference your notes and you see that, for example, in chapter 1, you kind of really go into a character's religion, right? But not like a deep dive. Just they worship Tochi or whatever, right? And then in your notes, you realize they don't really mention Tochi for 8 chapters. You might want to go back and kind of slip some Tochi references, even if it's just references to the belief in there. Now, of course, if they're not religious characters, you don't have to necessarily do that. But if it's a shaman or a cleric or a priest or a druid, whatever it is, you want that their behavior to be based solely on their choices, which might include their religious decisions. And that's just something to think about. But additionally, the world in which they walk in, what I was mentioning at the beginning was, it's not always about world building. It's about narrative, right? And you want the plot and how it unfolds through the story to create the world building and not the other way around. You don't want to create world building in a sense of, I want people to know about this major city, so I'm going to just talk about that major city. No, have somebody from that city. Make it coherent to the overall story as well. Why are they talking about that city? Why do we need to know that they came from that city, and when they lived in that city there was this river or this forest or this a blank or this is it's a culture of blah. If we're never going to visit that city, you might have to rethink your story a little bit. Is it okay to be like, oh yeah, I came here from blah blah blah? Well, that's fine. That's sort of world building through the character, and like, oh, you're from the north or the unknown, the undiscovered west, right? Whatever. But if you go deeply into that just to add world building information and it doesn't necessarily influence the story in any way, either the plot or the subplots or character development, it might not necessarily be worth it. And these are things you're looking for on your reread after your break. Okay. Proper pace of the action. Okay. Another thing, but not the last thing, but for this list, it is the last thing, I don't want to go into like a million things, but your pacing. How fast do things go by, or how slow do they go by? Keep track of a scene, chapter, and plot point section. Sometimes things need to breathe, and if they happen quickly, it might take away from the growth of the story through your narrative. A narrative can't just be plot. There needs to be a story that unfolds. So when you're rereading your story after your break, and what I would do is, if there's like a chunk of exposition or a chunk of a lot happening, or we're learning a lot about something, like a lot, You might want to say, all right, I may want to pull this out and let it breathe a little bit. But you might also have the direct opposite. It's too vague. So you might want to kind of shrink it down and add a little bit more information or let a little bit more unfold, whatever the case may be. And scenes, chapters, and plot points, you got to look at it in that way. There's, fights probably want to have a little bit more, like a little movement, a little fast, slow, fast, 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 slow, fast, slow. Is it a high energy conversation? Is there urgency? That changes the feel of it, and you want to make sure that those are there, because sometimes you could do an aside and it kind of just destroys the pacing. So be aware of that while you're rereading. Okay, next subject. How long is too long? That's what she said. Okay. Long enough where you don't remember every little detail, but not too long where you forget the basics of your story. So how long is too long to take the break? Honestly, this could be a week to a month. Personally, I wouldn't take a break longer than 2 months at the most. In the end, though, you'll be the judge of that time length based on how much you recall of the story and plot. Honestly, you shouldn't be thinking about the story during this time, at least not in depth. Give yourself a real break of freedom by letting your mind work on other things. If anything, you could give yourself a week and see how you feel. If you need more time than that, you're allowed to get it. The point of this time is to forget enough to know that you'll be able to explore enough. So to sum that up any more than I just did is, honestly, you could go week by week. Maybe you could set 2 weeks. You could do a month. Whatever makes it till you get to that threshold time, and you say to yourself, how much do I remember my book? Do I know everything? And the idea is, like, you want to remember the least, but like remembering character names, the gist of their plots, things like that, that's okay. But if you remember details, like greater details, you might want to take a little longer break. Okay. There are people like Taika Waititi. He's known to take a year to 2 years break from a script. But while he's taking that break, he's working on those scripts, other projects. So it's okay to continue to work on things while you're taking that break. Which brings us to what to do in the meantime. So while you're taking that break, you can actually work on another novel. That's right. You can give your time and effort to another novel, to another piece of work. You should be working to forget the manuscript you just worked on. So, what better way to do that than working on a new novel? But that doesn't mean you have to stop writing, thinking, or working through your creative needs of passion when you take your break. So, that's why you could work on another novel. You can continue to utilize your creative energy. Another element is relax. You absolutely can take a full mental break after you write your first draft, especially if you're only going to take a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month off. Enjoy the time you have and let it go, to let that time go to rest, and also giving that big brain of yours some time to enjoy in the sun, maybe read a couple books, whatever the case may be. Or if you're like me, enjoy the shade of staying inside and listening to music or watching movies and television, or reading a good book. You can do anything you want because it's your life. The only thing you can't do is work on the manuscript you are taking a break from, because that would literally cancel out the process. Oh, also, no murder. You can't kill people. Don't do that. I think murder is still illegal. So, yeah, anyway. Final thoughts. I know it's hard to walk away from something you just spent a lot of time on. But the truth is, this is your chance to come back and give it 1,000% of your effort. You are doing your manuscript a favor by not allowing a beautiful mind to go so deep that it becomes exhausted. You want a clear and clean view on the work so you can give it everything it deserves. This is your passion in the shape of the written word. We give time to the things we love, so give time to yourself so you can then give time to your work. In the end, it is your story, your journey, your career. You want to do things that work for you. This is one method that has worked for me over the years. I know others do it too. Like I had mentioned earlier, Taika with TT, and his 1 or 2 years off with a script. So it's not an uncommon practice. What's lovely is you might come back to your manuscript and see it differently. If you give yourself enough rest, and you'll want to add or take away from it, develop characters that were throwaway characters, etc. You have the right to do whatever you want and however you want. It's your story, your process. And really, what's nice is if you do come back and you're like, you know what? This character isn't really doing anything, but I like this character. Let me give them a little bit more depth. Let me give them a little bit more truth, So next video in this series will focus on step 8 on the writing your novel, which is write your second draft. And some of the things we will talk about is we call this the polished draft, as it's meant to clean it up. We'll go over the purpose of the second draft, how to get the most out of your second draft instead of it just being another draft, and 2 tools of action to make the second draft a success. Basically, how to polish it and how to get it where it is ready for step 9. You know what time it is? It's time for the question. What's your favorite step in the writing process? Either what we've gone over thus far, if you've watched the whole series and you came back and you're doing a second run, did you discover a new writing step that you like? Or what is your own personal writing step that has worked for you? Let me know in the comments below. If you like what you're watching and you really want to get involved and you have not done so yet, please hit that bell icon and subscribe so you don't miss out. Because that's just how it works here. And, as always, keep developing the right mindset. Hey, I'll see you next time. Love you all. Thanks again for supporting the channel. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.